It is so great to be back at the summit. I have to tell you, I'm honored to be invited to be with all of you today. And yeah, we are going to talk about leading within a fully engaged organization, but let's talk about engagement and energy. My youth was spent very typical. I was engaged and I was energized. My behaviors to demonstrate my engagement may have been questionable, may have been unique. For example, when I was 17 years old, I was a foreign exchange student in Guatemala. I climbed an active volcano all the way to the top of the cone. I still have the photos that I'm shooting across the top of the cone with steam and rock spewing out of the cone. You had to be engaged if you did this. 2 weeks after that, I'm still in Guatemala. I actually went up to the jungles of northern Guatemala and I hiked the Mayan ruins of Tikal. There were toucans and monkeys, and then we heard jaguars. When you hear jaguars and you're in the jungle alone, you are engaged. I was a college tennis player. When I competed, I was energized and I was engaged. And but with age, things change. And as I look back, I sort of became a victim of our global culture and how we treat human beings in organizational situations. In school, I started thinking about, I sat through long classes. I started thinking about business people, and when we go into conferences, we sit for long periods of time. It's honestly, you think that the only way we're supposed to learn and be productive is to sit down. And I said, well, what's wrong with this? Now, so I really began studying this a few years ago in a very deep way to what's happening in our world. What's really going on? And the results, I got to tell you, they're alarming. So I wanted to really go through this. Now, before I give you the data to get started on this, because I believe that your body and your mind, these are your laboratory. This is your laboratory. So let's see where you are. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How many of you during a typical day you feel like you run out of time? Oh, everybody raises their hand. How about this one? You get home at night after work and you're tired. You only have to raise one hand, please. How about this one? Do your routines ever become weak? Let me define that. Are there ever days you go longer than 4 hours without eating? Or are there ever days you don't connect with loved ones the way you'd like to? Raise your hands. Sure. See, then our values become compromised. For a lot of people, this is a train wreck. It's disastrous. How about this one? Let's look at our behaviors. Raise your hand if you've got the guts to do this. Raise your hand if you've ever driven in the parking lot of a store trying to find a space closer to the door. See, this is the one where people raise their hand and they're going, we've all done this, and we're talking maybe 25 meters further. Are you kidding me? But we will drive incessantly. There's a spot. Our behaviors, it's really amazing. So let's take a look at what's going on in businesses globally. First of all, friends, the team is exhausted. We can just go to that first. The team's exhausted. This is data out of Gallup. Only 28% of the workforce is engaged, really connected to what they're doing. Get this one, 1 in 4 high potential employees plans to leave in the next 12 months. Globally, there's been a decline in engagement. Went down by 4% over the period of 1 year. And it's still going on. How does this impact our employees? Well, we know this. Who you are now is a consequence of your past energy investment. See, we have trained to be who we are, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually to this moment in time. But the good news is, who you are going to become is going to be a consequence of your future energy investments. So it doesn't have to we don't have to settle, I guess. That's what I'm getting at. But I think sometimes we do settle. This is the way it is. I can't change. We've got to really take a hard look at that. The bottom line takes a hit. Look at this, again, from Towers Watson. Disengaged workforces decrease operating income by 33% and earnings per share by 11%. Disengaged employees in the US alone, about $300 billion per year. So it's alarming. The impact that we see, shortage of innovative talent. Every organization I work with throughout the world, I hear, we need better innovation. And then I sit back and I go, look how we're treating our people. Look at the biology of what's going on. We have a lack of critical thinking and problem solving. And I go, what are you expecting? We have a cost of underutilized talent. We have shrinking profits. This is what we hear from companies. So what we have to do first is, let's say, how have we historically tried to solve that problem? This is really interesting. How have we historically done this? And by the way, what I'm going to show you right now is on the handout, so you don't need to take notes. Just follow along with me, if you will, please. So the business world's response to everything we face. First of all, there's brutal accountability. There's intense pressure to perform better year after year. Last year's records become this year's baseline. I love to ask this question. Are you asked to do more this year? And the answer is yes. And then I ask this, what did you do to increase your capacity to meet an increased demand? Guess what people look, they say nothing. Excuse me? Let's understand this biologically. I've had more demand, but I've done nothing. So then what happens? We have to take time, which is finite. We have to take time away from our health, from our family, from things that really matter to us. But then what happens, if the demand keeps going up and we do nothing, there's suddenly no more time. And that's what we're facing. So we start saying, okay, this is what's happened. Well, what was the business world's response? Let's work longer and harder. We're just going to get after it more. We're going to improve our training. We'll improve our technology. We're going to compete more intensely. We're going to focus on the area between your ears. This is what we care for, this gray matter between your ears. And we're going to improve how you manage your time. Did that work? No. You saw the data. So, the interesting thing then, has this ever happened before? Yes. And I want to make a statement right now. Are you ready? Biologically, how we treat our people in business is exactly where sport was, are you ready? 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Let me show you, because this is how I started my career with world-class athletes. Look at this. Anything look familiar? In sport, there's brutal accountability, intense pressure, last year's records, this year's baseline, push to do more with less. The athletes are underperforming. It's the same thing. So what did sport do 50 years ago? We were told if you need water, you're weak. If you strength train, you're going to lose flexibility. You can't do it. So we worked harder in sport. We improved our training. We did everything. We competed more intensely. We focused, the whole thing about technology. I was very involved in high-speed cinematography in the early 80s. I was told by world-class coaches, stay away from my athletes with these videos, with these films, because they said they thought they'd go through paralysis by analysis. Now every pro team spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on videography. Hello? So we go back to this. Did that work? No, it didn't work in sport. It didn't work. So we have to start saying, well, what do we need to do then? Well, let's take a look at what a low-performance approach is biologically to a human being. And we're going to compare sport and business, coping strategies, symptoms of stress, and results. In sport, prior to the 1960s, athletes were pushed harder, they trained longer, they did not allow for recovery. There was anxiety, depression, injury, psychological problems. It was almost written off, well, it is what it is. Can't do anything about it. It's part of being an athlete. The results were shortened careers, lifelong health issues. Now let's look at employees in business today. Are you ready? We're pushed harder. we work longer hours, and we don't allow for recovery. If you don't, by the way, don't believe me, look at the data. HR research says that most executives do not take vacation. And if they do take their vacation, they don't disconnect from work. They continue working when they're on vacation. So we're not recovering. We're not getting recovery. Disengagement from work, you saw the data that I presented earlier. There's sleeplessness, big problem, fatigue, indulging in unhealthy behaviors. There's defensiveness, frustration, pessimism, impatience, rampant throughout the business world. The results? Presenteeism and absenteeism. By the way, presenteeism, that word, didn't even exist before 1995. It didn't even exist. Are you kidding me? I think some of these things, I just sit back and I go, what's going on? The biology of the organism, how we're created, we're not paying attention to it. So let's take a look then, well, what would a high performance approach look like then, if that's the case? Elite athletes today, they work to balance multiple dimensions of the whole person: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. They allow for recovery. Every world-class athlete, every team, they build in recovery cycles. Because you see, what we know is stress is the stimulus for growth. Recovery is when you grow. If you have no recovery, you have no growth. So recovery, the recapture of energy in each dimension, becomes important. That's critical to the process. What happens? Athletes are bigger, faster, stronger, mentally tougher. There's better teamwork, and they've got longer careers. So let's talk about what employees of the future might look like. Okay, so this is the future. This isn't happening yet. The future. We allow for balance of multiple dimensions for the whole person. We allow for recovery. Time off is allowed. Periodization is the idea of work-rest ratios. It's a phenomenal concept that work and rest have to be in ratios. And that has to be allowed for. We end up with high engaged, higher performing, healthier, and more energetic employees, teams, and greater innovation. So now, given all that, as leaders, how should you be thinking? How should you be thinking? Well, let's define things. Human energy is simply the capacity to do work. Now, be very careful here with that definition. This is not to squeeze more blood out of the turnip. Okay? But when we have energy, see, it's really interesting to me that all of us, how we're designed, we come to the table, personally and professionally, with incredible talent and skill. Unbelievable. Guess what the greatest limiting factor is? How we live our life. See, a lot of people, they've got a lot of talent and skill, but the way we're living our life, we can't even bring our talent and skill to the surface at all. What have athletes learned? They've learned how to bring their talent and skill to the surface on demand. How great would that be if we would allow ourselves the ability to do that, to access our talent and skill? We know that human energy is the currency of high performance. By the way, let's look at human energy. Healthy energy. Happy, fulfilled, joy, energy to the right places. Bringing your best self to everything you do. That's what we mean by this. Bringing our best self to everything we do, personally and professionally. See, where people have fallen down, they think that all I have to do is manage my time. Wrong. Time management only takes us from being absent to being present. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have been on time for a meeting, in the meeting, and not been in the meeting? Not now. You're with me, right? Okay. But you see, that's what happens. We manage our time. We're there for the family event. We'll go to the concert or the ball game, and we're there. We're on time, and then we got our PD. We're on our phone, and we're texting, and we're not even paying attention. Or we get a call from work. We say, honey, I'm at your game, or I'm at your concert, or I'm at dinner with my family. Phone goes, and we answer it. We've looked at them and said, I'm here with you. But as soon as we pick it up, what does our behavior say? This is more important. See, this is where we got to be careful. Because the words out of our mouth as leaders, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's our behaviors. I get such a kick out of leaders who say, I don't want anybody in our company emailing on Saturdays. Guess what? That same leader I've witnessed emailing at midnight on Saturday night. See, and it's one thing to do it. It's another thing to give people permission that if you feel like you have to email at midnight on Saturday night, let people know that you don't expect a response until Monday morning. See, it's really quite simple, but we're not doing this. See, I've often said this, technology, yes, it's made us more productive, but it's made us weaker as a species. Because you see, before 1995, if you left work, it was hard to find you. I mean, think about this. When you left work, people had to call, you had an automated voicemail, and they prayed that you picked up their voicemail. But they had plans, they had contingencies that if they didn't hear from you, it was all like that. But today, are you kidding me? We are accessible 24/7, 365, the rest of our lives. And here's what's happened. Technology's made us more productive, but it's made us weaker as a species because nobody's taught us how to have boundaries. Nobody's taught us how to be intentional with all this new technology. Nobody's taught us about boundaries with this new technology. Nobody's taught us about making the right choices. We have, as leaders, this falls on us, by the way. This totally falls on us as leaders. So how do you lead? I love Peter Drucker's quote, one of the great management gurus of the last century. Peter Drucker said this before he even knew there was a science around energy management. Your first and foremost job as a leader is to take charge of your own energy and then help orchestrate the energy of those around you. Where does it start, though, everybody? With you. Now, does it start with the words out of your mouth? No. It starts with our behaviors as leaders. See, the behaviors dictate the story that we tell. See, the words we tell, that's important, but one of the worst things for a leader is to say something and then do the other. That's really tough. So it starts with you and your behaviors. So let's understand this human energy crisis that we faced. You saw the hard data when we started. There's disengagement, suboptimal performance we're hearing about, high absenteeism, fatigue is rampant, relationship conflicts, poor sleep, poor health, unsatisfying work-life balance. We hear that constantly, and compromised leadership. But you see, and these things, this next slide, for me, it's all about the first sentence. And I'm going to say the first sentence twice. When demand persistently exceeds our capacity. Everybody with me on that one? When the demand is never ending and it persistently exceeds our capacity, the negative consequences are what, everybody? Inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. See, I love it when the people come home from work and they've had a really long day and it's been go, 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 and they get home and they sit in their couch and they get the remote control and this is what they look like. You don't care what's on, you only care what else is on. Raise your hand if you've ever done that. See, a lot of people think that's a guy thing. It's not a guy thing. See, here's the deal. Are you ready for what I'm going to say based on that slide? See, if you live your life in a very linear way, just go, 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 no recovery, just go, 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 the body is going to shut down. We're not created in this way. Because the body will get recovered. The body and the mind will just shut down. Anybody ever work? I know when you're the most productive in your work life. You know when that is? It's the week before vacation. You get more work done than you've ever gotten done in 1 week. And then you go on vacation, you get to the beach. Raise your hand, tell me the truth if you've ever gotten sick the first 2 or 3 days of vacation. Look around the room. Why? Just go, go, go. And then you go on vacation, and we get sick. Our immune system, see, we're not created this way, everybody. So people come to us, and we ask them, how satisfied are you, if at all, with your current energy level? And look at this. This is startling. 27% not satisfied at all. This is, 46%, somewhat, yeah. Only 27% extremely satisfied. That's fascinating to me. This piece of data, 93% of employees are interested in increasing their energy levels. 58% are extremely interested. Now, you know what that means to me as I look at, when I do leadership development? That, my friends, is a big opportunity. My people want to have more energy. And we know that we have to have energy to access all of our talent and skill. And it's fascinating. If you think about, we built no recovery into our business lives. Where were you when you've had your best ideas? You've been exercising, sleep, in the shower. Yes or no? Absolutely. Your best ideas came when you were in recovery. Not when we're going to go in this boardroom and we're going to stay in here until we figure this out. Everybody freezes up. Nothing happens. We get our greatest ideas when we're in recovery, yet we don't build recovery mechanisms into the business world. So we got to start taking a look at all this. So this energy crisis, we believe, is four-dimensional. It's four-dimensional. People are often in business and in churches and in organizations, they get unclear on why they're doing what they're doing. And you might think that, well, that doesn't make sense if it's church, but I got to tell you, it absolutely can. Human beings are mission specific as a species. Multitasking is rampant, yet the human brain can only focus on one thing at a time. When you really have to focus, you can only focus on one thing at a time. Survival emotions are accepted. Are you kidding me? They're acceptable in global cultures. Impatience is accepted. Defensiveness is accepted. It's not how we're wired. And fatigue is rampant. So it's multidimensional, this crisis we're facing. So organizationally, and what I have to say right now, I say respectfully to my human resource colleagues. But respectfully, I say this to leaders. Strategic directions of business, health must be a business imperative. See, health has been relegated to human resources to just kind of check it off the box. When in fact, we're getting data now that the healthier we are, the better we are for the business and the organization. Strategic direction around full employee participation and engagement. Strategic alignment and shared ownership to meet the business needs. Shared ownership on the mission of what we're after. We start changing the biology of how we think. So what are the to-dos, the very specific to-dos for you as a leader? These are the lessons I want to share with you when we work with our high performers. Now, our high performers that we've worked with over 35 years, athletes, business leaders, military special forces, FBI agents, and surgeons in surgical suites. Number one, manage energy, not just time. Time is a tool to manage your energy. In other words, you need to schedule time for a small break. I'm going to show you how in just a moment. Because a lot of people go right away, well, I can't do that at my place of business. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Seek stress rather than avoid it. See, stress has been given a bad name. Yet biologically, we must have stress to expand our capacity. In which dimensions? All of them. All of them. Balance episodes of stress with strategic recovery versus just chronic stress exposure. And train holistically, not one dimension. So you train physically, you train mentally, you train emotionally, and you train spiritually. That's the way to increase your capacity to withstand tougher times. So what I want to do is just take one application. I want to show you the research that we've been doing over the last 4 years on one application. In fact, it's kind of funny because I love to tell our young researchers that I work with, I wish I was 25 again. Because I think the next 50 years in the field that I'm going to share with you right now, it's going to be incredible. I was just telling Bill before we started, 10 years ago when I spoke at the summit previously, we didn't have the technology we have today. Now we've got the technology that we can do fMRI imaging of the brain and see what happens when somebody's more patient, when somebody's laser focused versus scattered, when somebody's more active, when somebody's connected to something that really matters to them. We could see what happens in the brain. It's amazing what we're able to do now. And I mean, the next 50 years is just going to be incredible. I'm so excited for what's possible. And we're only limited by our own imaginations almost. So let's just look at one application. Here we go. I'm going to throw this out to you. The human body is business relevant. So I'm just going to talk to you about the physical dimension. The physical dimension. Emerging science links immediate and long-term cognitive function to better sleep. See, we know this. We've always thought this. But now we're seeing that the more active someone is, the more the brain lights up. I'm going to show you the data on this. The brain actually lights up if you get up and start moving. And I'll show you why and how it all works. It's pretty cool. So here's the study. One of my favorite studies. It came out in 2010. You're welcome. You can find it on the internet. It's called When the Air Hits Your Brain. This is what they did. I just love this study. They put a probe into a human brain, okay? Now, I don't know how they got the subjects. I can only imagine this is why we have graduate students, okay? But they put a probe into the human brain, and the person started exercising. Now, we all know, if you start exercising, your heart rate goes up, right? But what we didn't know was that the brain doesn't recognize right away what the body's needs are. It takes about 1 to 2 minutes for the brain to recognize, okay, we're doing something. I've got to shunt this blood to me, and I've got to get all this extra blood and oxygen and nutrition to the muscles. It takes 1 to 2 minutes. Guess what this science found? See, we didn't have this 10 years ago. This science found that there's a hyperoxygenation in the brain in that 1 to 2 minutes. The brain is washed with oxygen and literally lights up. fMRI imaging shows that the brain just lights up in that 1 to 2 minutes. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to say, okay, let's study this. So I said, what if we created a paradigm shift? What if we got away from just sitting down, that we just sit to do things and be more productive, but we actually move to be more productive, to create what we might call an organization in motion. And motion, by the way, the reason it's capitalized, and this is global, it stands for Mobilize Oxygen to Ignite Our Nations. How you like that? Where you and your team members are moving often and at regular intervals throughout your day. Like every 25 to 30 minutes. Now the key thing here, it's not taking a break. Everybody with me on that? What I'm saying is we're giving people permission for walking meetings. If you're in a conference, you're allowed to stand up, go to the back of the room, stretch. You're allowed to move while the meeting is going on. That's a key thing, because a lot of people, see, and by the way, when I share this study with you, it's pretty interesting, because when we started doing this research, people would say, I'm not doing this. I'm not getting up to move. And we asked why not, and they said, I'm just not supposed to. And I'm going, really? Because you're not, honestly. So what we found was permission from the leader was critical. People don't believe this is right because culturally, see, we sit in school from an early age. What are we taught? If you're going to learn, you must sit still. Anybody hear that when you were a child? Sit still. Let's change that. Let's disrupt that. This is disruptive innovation, right? So what we did, this is the New Balance organization. Now, this is obviously, I want to stay on this slide for just a second because right away you could be biased, and you have this in your handout. But you could be biased. You go, well, wait a minute, it's New Balance. They're a footwear, they're a sports apparel company. Come on, this isn't fair. I worked with their global marketing head on this, and he said, yeah, but you understand, when we go into creative sessions, we do business the way everybody does business. We just go in a room and we sit. And I went, perfect. And we actually had people at New Balance who, when we started this study where they had to get up and move every 25 to 30 minutes, actually said, no, thank you, I worked out this morning. Guess what the research shows? There's research to show that even if you work out an hour in the morning, if you sit for long periods of time during your workday, the brain starts shutting down. It does not matter how fit you are. This is about moving all the time. And again, 10 years ago, we didn't have access to that data. So, by the way, we've done this in many organizations now, and this is typically what happens in every organization with energy. It's kind of a sideways S curve. And this is all self-reported data, but this is very typical. Now, as you look at this, this is the treatment. All they had to do was every 25 to 30 minutes. We had champions. The leader had to give permission. And there had to be champions at every level of the organization. So to come alongside, not to mandate, but to come alongside people and explain why this matters. Purpose. Why this matters. Not, no, you have to do it. It's why it matters. Always why. After 90 days, this is the energy levels. Anonymously reported. Statistically significant improvements, even at night and on the weekends, everybody. Now, let me just continue with this data. We've done this in 3 different organizations, the very same results. Let me continue with this data. Look at this. 42% of the respondents report increased engagement and focus at work. I want to stay on this for a second. What leader wouldn't do whatever it takes to get 42% of his or her employees to improve engagement and focus? Are you ready for the budget? 0 budget. All it was saying, we're going to get up and we're going to move often. That's it. No budget. No budget. So suddenly we're saying, whoa. See, a lot of these things, they require no budget. It's fascinating. Let's continue, though. This piece of research finding blew us away, but it was repeated at all 3 organizations. Intrinsic motivation improved. Now, the reason we believe this happened, we think it was because of the improved socialization. With everybody moving all the time, people enjoyed working here more. They enjoyed being here more. How cool is that? When we start thinking about what all this means and what it implies for all this. So we developed the idea that in 1 to 2 minutes, that whole thing that we started studying, you could change your business. We did this, we started doing this in the emotional and mental realm. Guess what we found? Fast Company actually wrote an article about this. Are you ready? We found out that calling a loved one and connecting with them in the afternoon had a greater impact on positive energy levels than having a cup of coffee. Hello? Wow. So we're starting to do all this work now. We call those microbursts. And we're doing all this. By the way, the headline of the article was, "Calling Your Mom is Better Than a Cup of Coffee." So we start to say, okay, well, then where are we headed with all this then? The old think is that physical activity is irrelevant to the workplace, when in fact, the workplace is predicated on inactivity. Sitting for long periods of time causes brain waves to just shut down. When we sit, we go into shutdown. So let's change that to a new think, where we perform at our best if we move a lot. The mere act of getting up gets us out of hibernation. Investing in people's health is investing in our company's future. So then what did we do with this? Okay, what I want to do is share with you where I'm taking this now, organizationally. This is for you as a leader. And I want to have a little fun with this on how we're created and designed. So this is the geeky side of me, okay? All right, I admit this to full well. So you have one column over here, and you got a human cell at the bottom. We're made of trillions and trillions of cells. Cell, and then the nervous system, there's a system in the brain, and then this incredible human being that God created that's emotional and mental and spiritual, this human being. Now, leave that column alone. Come over here to an organization. We got an employee, then we got teams, we got leaders, you leaders, and then we got the enterprise, okay? Isn't it interesting? You got these two columns? At the highest level on this column is this well-integrated human being that is at the lowest level on the organizational column. So what I did, I started playing around with this, and I said, let's create a staircase from the human cell all the way to the enterprise. And if we can get this rationale going where we create healthy people, managing their energy physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And then we get to that same level where the person and the employee, and suddenly if the person develops, we create mechanisms and champions at every level in the organization develops. Health, igniting performance. But you got to understand that it works the other way. That if we have unhealthy behaviors at the top, pushing down, saying, I expect you to be emailing on weekends. I expect you to be working 24/7, 365. If we have unhealthy behaviors pushing down, what happens to our employees? They become very unhealthy. They become disengaged. They become very disloyal. They become resentful. They don't want to be around. Everybody see what I'm getting at? So you see, there's an ebb and flow. There's an ebb and flow in this staircase. I want to leave you with this idea of we're just getting started on this. This is so exciting on what the future is. I hope this has given you a few little things to think about. But okay, so there's three takeaways for you today. Here we are. Number one, everyone you touch, they are multidimensional human beings. They are multi-dimensional human beings. There's a physical component, an emotional component, a mental component, and a spiritual component. They need to increase their capacity in each, and they need recovery in each. Does that make sense, everybody? Number one. Number two, we have to build in recovery processes as leaders. We have to help people understand that recovery is a part of our business success. The recapture of energy is key. We have to build that in. Number three, at least the research on this first piece that we need to create cultures of motion. It's wrong to just sit for long periods of time. Does that make sense, everybody? So then, here's the goal then, and I'm going to leave you with this last thought. When you get back to your homes and your offices, think this way. Energize yourself first. You're the leader. The buck starts and stops with you as far as creating high positive energy, engagement, and focus in your organization. Energize yourselves. Create champions in your teams that will help you support this. So you energize your teams. And then you see the staircase shows that if we do that, we have healthy teams and individuals creating a very healthy culture. So I get excited about this. With the impact that all of you are going to have, let's energize. Let's create. Let's work together. Let's create an energized and engaged world together. Thank you very much.